today is Israel's future according to Bible prophecy. Shall be able. We can't know the future, yet Daniel 12:10 tells us, none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall be able to understand. So Almighty God said, in the days when Great Britain and Russia are powers in the earth, I am coming to the world to put down the thrones of men and to establish my kingdom. How astounding is this? That in 550 BC, Almighty God prophesied the United States of America and where we would come from. I mean, we're talking about 2,300 years in advance. It appears the scriptures tell us, as well as Yossi Beilin earlier in 2013 told us, that this will be an interim agreement. As a matter of fact, Beilin quoted Netanyahu as saying that he would okay a provisional Palestinian state. So what will be the provisions of this interim agreement? First thing, it will turn the West Bank, which is biblical Judea, Samaria, over to the Palestinians as soon as the agreement is consummated. Furthermore, the Temple Mount is a source of tremendous conflict. That 37 acres, that is the most disputed 37 acres on the planet. Right now, the Muslims worship there. They have the Dome of the Rock, the Al-Aqsa Mosque. But this is the holiest place to the Jewish people. This is where their first temple stood, their second temple stood. And so there's a lot of strife over it right now. Well, this agreement is going to put this under a sharing arrangement. Both Muslims and Jews will be able to worship there, and it will be under international supervision.
This week on Jerusalem Dateline, Israel remembers the Holocaust. Israelis stand in silence to commemorate the 6 million who died under the Nazi regime and their final solution. While Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu warned the same incitement promoted by Hitler still exists in the world today. Plus, one ministry is reaching out to help the Yazidi people in northern Iraq, a nation facing their own genocide. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. Israelis marked Holocaust Remembrance Day. One of the ways they do this is when a siren at 10 in the morning sounds throughout the nation. People stop their cars, stop what they're doing, and stand for 2 minutes in silence. Here's what it looks and sounds like. During a ceremony at Yad Vashem, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that incitement against Jews preceded the Holocaust. He said that same kind of incitement still exists in the world today.
This incitement against Israel is rooted in extreme Islamism and in the Arab world. But for the last years, it was joined by incitement that is no less malicious from the Western world, British Parliament members, Swedish officials, public opinion leaders in France. I must say that anti-Semitism these days is creating odd pairings.
Netanyahu said this incitement and lies about Israel are spread by social media in a way Hitler could only have imagined. He said that same social media can also be a vehicle to spread the truth. Well, 70 years after the Allies opened the Nazi death camps, They found the vortex of 6 million Jewish dead. Today, not many Holocaust survivors remain, but as John Wagi explains, Israelis are working hard to keep their memory alive.
It's difficult to grasp the horror and destruction of the Nazi killing machine. 1/3 of the world's Jews were murdered. The pain and scars endure to the next generations. David Hershkovitz would hear his mother screaming in her sleep as she relived the agony. A German soldier separated her from her own mother, who died at Auschwitz.
She didn't speak about the gas chambers because she wasn't there. She didn't speak about the fact that they were burning bodies. She wasn't there. But during the separation, she was there, and the separation didn't leave her.
Hershkovitz's mother died 2 years ago, but through a second-generation study course in Central Israel, he's keeping her story alive. The Shem Olam Holocaust Institute is educating people like Hershkovitz to tell their stories when the Holocaust survivors are gone. The Institute's director, Avram Krieger, says many children didn't ask tough questions of their parents.
How did the parents deal with guilt questions during those moments? How did they go through the difficult moments of separation, of leaving, of difficult decisions? They weren't able to ask this, and apparently, the parents weren't able to answer.
Meanwhile, in Jerusalem, the Yad Vashem Holocaust Museum tells more stories in an exhibition called Children in the Holocaust, Stars Without a Heaven, with dolls and sketches. Ina Renat Rahavi's teddy bear is on display. She carried the bear during a remarkable escape with her mother from the train car leading them to Auschwitz.
Teddy lasted better than I did, and many others. He is more war-wounded than I am since he is missing an ear and an arm, but he was a real hero.
John Wagi, CBN News.
Another major way to keep the memory of the Holocaust alive is something called the March of the Living. Julia, they're in Krakow, Poland at the March of the Living. Tell me what it's like right there.
Yeah, we're actually in Auschwitz. It's about an hour and a half from Krakow, where we were for the last 2 days. And there's thousands, literally thousands of teenagers and other people from all over the world. I think more than 40 countries in the world are participating. There's a lot of energy here, so it's very dramatic.
Tell us exactly what March of the Living is.
So the March of the Living was started almost 30 years ago, and it was started by people who wanted to keep the memory of the Holocaust alive by bringing kids here, basically, or teenagers here, to experience what went on during the Holocaust, taking it out of the classroom and bringing them here as their classroom. They marched the 3 kilometers from Auschwitz to Birkenau, both death camps used by the Nazis in World War II, actually on Yom HaShoah, Israel's Holocaust Remembrance Day. And then they go on to Israel and they celebrate at the Western Wall on Yom HaTzmaut, on Independence Day.
Well, you've talked to some of those kids. What are their experiences and what are they feeling themselves?
You know, I'm really pleased. We've basically talked to several kids from Florida, and you know, 2 of them at least had grandparents that were Holocaust survivors. So it's very close to people. It's very near to them. You know, we hear a lot about rising anti-Semitism, but actually, I mean, these kids, you know, they're out there, and they said their friends encouraged them to come. Non-Jewish friends encouraged them to come. So they have really quite interesting stories.
We talked before we started this interview that you've shed a few tears already. What kind of impact has it had on you?
Yeah, it's very emotional. On the one hand, you know, Krakow is a beautiful city. It's beautiful. It's the one city the Nazis didn't destroy. And on the other hand, I'm thinking, gee, you know, 70 years ago, what evil was done here? One thing that we're finding out a lot here is how the Polish people kind of relate to this as they're the victims too. It had the highest number of Jews that were killed in the Holocaust came from Poland, but also the highest number of righteous among the nations. The highest number of people who actually saved Jews came from Poland. And those people, unlike in other places, if you were caught hiding a Jew, you would get arrested. But in Poland, if the Nazis caught you hiding a Jew, you, your whole family, and the Jews were shot on the spot. So Yeah, there was also evil and also a lot of sacrifice here.
What do you think is the lesson for people today about the Holocaust?
You know what? Yesterday we were at this conference called Nuremberg, Hate and Justice, marking the 70th anniversary of the Nuremberg trials and the 80th anniversary of the Nuremberg laws, which basically put this the racial discrimination into practice. I think what the people there were saying is that you have to keep fighting. You have to keep speaking out. You can't let things go by. They highlighted, of course, everybody knows Raoul Wallenberg, and he was just one man, but he saved thousands of people. He was courageous. The odds were against him. And I think that would be the message, that, you know, the evil is there, and it isn't going to go away. We know that. And but it's to take courage and do the right thing at the right time, even if it costs you your life, even if it costs you whatever. You have to do the right thing at the right time.
Well, that's a great message, a great takeaway from your experience, and for those people that are listening right now. Yeah. We look forward to your report, Julie, next week on your experiences up there, and I know you're going to be heading from Auschwitz right now to Birkenau. I know it's a very solemn occasion, but thanks for joining us right now, and we'll see you in a few days. Despite events like March of the Living commemorating the Holocaust, Israel is still surrounded more than 70 years later by countries and groups committed to its destruction. We found out more about those threats when the Deputy Chief of Staff of the IDF met with the foreign press. With all the threats on Israel's borders, its number one threat is about 1,000 miles away, Iran.
I would like to emphasize the fact that Iran is a different foe comparing to anything we experienced before in our 68 years of independence.
General Golan says that Iran sees itself as an empire and is reaching into nearly every area of the Middle East to become the dominant power in the region, from Iraq, Syria, Yemen, and beyond.
Just unbelievable. You can find Iran today everywhere.
He said Israel takes Iran very seriously.
When I hear Khamenei and every other prominent Iranian person talking about the inspiration of Iran, about the urgent need to eliminate Israel, I take it very, very seriously. They are not joking.
Golan also pointed a finger at Hezbollah, Iran's terrorist arm spread throughout Lebanon. They have more than 100,000 missiles aimed at Israel.
This is unprecedented threat to the Israeli civilians.
He described what Israel's next war inside Lebanon would look like.
We are not going to see small war in Lebanon. It's going to be decisive. It's going to be full-scale war. It's going to be with all the capabilities of the IDF. And I'm sorry to say that. I have I don't feel any sense of happiness when describing that. That could create devastating damage to Lebanon.
In addition to trouble all around, Israel must fight cyber attacks and terrorism within its borders. For all these challenges, Golan says, the IDF needs to be prepared for the unexpected.
Because changes in the region are so frequent. So we have to monitor the situation all the time, and we have to be prepared to all kinds of developments.
Up next, see how one Holocaust survivor became a recognized artist, joined the March of the Living, and found victory over the horrors of the Holocaust. Of those who survived the Holocaust, many now live in Israel. We found one who has an amazing story to tell.
This painting is a recent one. I named it The Wounded Survivor.
Rita Kazimel Brown was 7 years old when the Nazis invaded her hometown of Termot in Poland. In 1941, Nazis rounded up the Jews there and put them in a ghetto. Rita is now a recognized Holocaust artist who has worked as an art therapist. Her survival experience is the theme of many of her paintings.
I'm the wounded survivor. I always painted myself in white. I think it has to do with not so white nightgown that I survived the whole Holocaust in.
At 80, Rita is bubbly and vibrant. If not for her artwork and her story, you might never know her painful past. Yet she carries her memories with her every day.
I'm not sure if it's totally that you cannot heal the wound. It's something that still works in your memory, and it affects your daily life.
Her story is told in the book Portrait of a Holocaust Child, Memories and Reflections. Rita told CBN News how she and her family escaped the ghetto and survived in what they called the grub.
And my father went away for a few days, and what he did, he found another Christian family in a little town called Malaki, and there he dug a big pit under the stable, and it had a connection to the potato bin and a ledge you can open to the farmer's home. My father and my mother and the two little kids were with them, and only my little brother could stand up. And I was lying in the passageway from the pit to the potato bin. This is how we lived 20 months. We were hungry and fearful, and it was just a living hell. We called it, it was a living grave.
Being awake was a nightmare, she said, hour by hour, suffering day and night. Most of her father's 12 siblings died, where her little family of 5 stayed alive.
Being creative helped me survive, but not only survive, but keep my sanity.
In 2006, Rita revisited Poland for the first time to join the March of the Living. While there at Auschwitz, a spider bite took special significance.
And there is this black spider that bit me, and it looks a little bit like a swastika. Yeah. And it's also soaked with blood.
A mother of 2 and grandmother of 3, she's seen many miracles in her life.
We have kind of a survival instinct, which was very strong, but now it's weakening because when you get older, your defenses go down. And so the only thing that we have is because of our children and grandchildren. That's our victory.
Coming up, see how a modern group of people are still suffering from a genocide and how one group is committed to help. Since ISIS took over northern Iraq in 2014, we've had the privilege several times to sit down and meet some of the Yazidi people. They're sweet, gentle folk. We met some of them after ISIS drove them out of the main city of Sinjar. I remember vividly sitting down on the ground with some 12-year-old boys who saw ISIS kill a neighborhood friend. We've also sat down with a 19-year-old girl who was sold as a sex slave. They're an ancient people and have been persecuted by their Muslim neighbors for centuries. And now ISIS is committing genocide against them. One Christian group is ministering to them, just a few kilometers from the ISIS front lines. Chuck Holton brings us the story from the Iraqi city of Sinjar.
Mount Sinjar made international headlines in 2014 when tens of thousands of Yazidis fled into these hills to escape ISIS, carrying little more than the clothes on their backs. 2 winters have come and gone, and there are still thousands of Yazidis living in makeshift camps. Most Yazidis won't be able to return to Sinjar for years, if ever. But help is coming from an unlikely place, the country of Burma, also known as Myanmar. These Burmese Christians have come to Iraq to give aid and training to the Yazidis and the Kurdish army, and they understand persecution better than most. They belong to a group called the Free Burma Rangers. David Eubank is the founder.
For the past 20+ years, we've been in Burma in the different conflict areas, sharing the love of Jesus, giving people help, and getting the news out. And then last year, we were invited here, and this is our 4th trip where we've come back to help the Kurdish people under attack by ISIS.
The Free Burma Rangers has made a name for itself, going into conflict zones around the world and helping the world's most vulnerable people. Dave's background and military experience made him uniquely prepared for this kind of ministry.
My background, growing up as a missionary kid in Thailand, hunting since I was very small, running around the jungle, also in the Rangers, and then later in Special Forces, all that enabled me to understand, how do you function in a war zone? How can you help people? What's realistic? What's not realistic? What can you really do?
This trip, the Free Burma Rangers have been here for 6 weeks, spending time with frontline troops, conducting training and providing medical care. They've also brought over $20,000 worth of donated warm clothing for the Yazidis living on top of Mount Sinjar. But Dave doesn't do this alone. He brings his wife and 3 children because they believe these Yazidi children can more easily relate to the gospel that way.
I have faith in God that He will protect me wherever I go and wherever our family goes. ISIS is a very strong force that needs to be stopped, and there are still women and children held captive by ISIS. Sinjar just mostly looks like rubble, and buildings have been destroyed, and many have just been flattened.
We're driving through the city of Sinjar, and I'm starting to notice that there are civilians coming back in. Even just a second ago saw a shop that was open. People are kind of scavenging around through the ruins, picking up whatever they can find that's useful, and just starting the process of putting their lives back together.
One of those families was fortunate that ISIS used their home as a headquarters, and so it wasn't destroyed. They've opened a bakery to sell bread to the soldiers who are guarding the city.
As the first families start to come back into the shattered city of Sinjar, the FBR team is here conducting a Good Life Club and teaching these Yazidi kids that God's love is deep and wide.
One man we met told us ISIS kidnapped his wife in 2014, and he hadn't heard from her until 3 days before this interview. She called to say she was being held in a prison in Ramadi and that ISIS was now asking for a ransom of $5,000. Before he could finish his story, his phone rang. It was his cousin, a 15-year-old boy, captured about the same time as his wife. The young man had been taken to an ISIS training camp in Syria and was pleading for help to escape. Everyone had thought he was dead. As ISIS is slowly being pushed out of Iraq, they're starting to try and ransom their captives back to their families. And despite the cost, these Yazidis are desperate to get their loved ones back.
What would you do if your wife was captured 2 years ago with your baby kids? What would you do, really? I think you would move heaven and earth to go save them. And that's what we need to do.
For the time being, Dave and his team are continuing to do what they can to shine the light of hope into a very dark place.
Oh, hello, infantry!
From Mount Sinjar, I'm Chuck Holton for CBN News.
Coming up, Holocaust survivors getting a helping hand in their hour of need. When we come back. As we mentioned before, there are fewer and fewer Holocaust survivors living in Israel today. Many of them are struggling to get by. So CBN is on the ground and getting them the food and medicine they need.
Elizabeth Tishman is one of about 200,000 Holocaust survivors living in Israel. She was only 11 years old when the horror of the Holocaust began to unfold in her native Russia. Nazis forced her neighbors into ghettos. To avoid capture, her family took refuge in a friend's basement. In the darkness, she witnessed terrible tragedies.
There was a little child with his mother, and he cried a lot. She suffocated him with her bare hands to keep us all from getting caught and killed.
When they had to abandon their hiding place, they were eventually forced to live in the ghetto.
Do you know what is it like to lay on straw when it is raining and you don't have a blanket to cover yourself? Or when a Nazi officer comes at night to search your house? It is a nightmare.
After 3 torturous years, news came that the war was finally over.
People ran into the streets shouting, "We are free!" We all cried and laughed and hugged each other. It was incredible.
Today, like many Holocaust survivors in Israel, Elizabeth lives in poverty.
When I first came here, I had only cucumbers, tomatoes, and bread and butter.
CBN Israel helps Holocaust survivors by taking groceries to them each month. Elizabeth says she looks forward to every visit.
I like when they come, and I like that they believe in God. If God led me through this life, and you have come to see me, that means that God has not forgotten me.
Recently, Elizabeth's gas stove started to leak. She didn't have the money to fix it and had no way to cook. So we took her shopping and bought her a new stove.
I want to thank you so much for your help. May God bless you and give you health and happiness.
Well, that's a heartwarming story. That's all for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. I'm Chris Mitchell. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.